to start with the sensorial area, and the first lesson that we like to do that uses the 3-period lesson is with the geometric solids. And so we teach the children the proper name for everything from the get-go because their brains are so absorbent and they're ready for all of these names. So we start with the first 3 solids that they find within the environment. This is the rectangular prism, and this you find with the broad stare. There are lots of lessons with the cylinder, so we also use the cylinder. And we have the tower of cubes in the classroom too, so we'll start with the cube. And so the first part of the lesson is just association. So we'd set these out, and I would just point and say the name. Rectangular prism, cylinder, cube, cube, cylinder, rectangular prism. And so I'd go through that a few times, just touching and naming them, so they would start to associate the name with the material. And then the second period requires a little more of the child. So I'd say, can you please put the rectangular prism in your lap? And so I take off, please put the rectangular prism on the rug. Can you put this cylinder under the rug? And so we would go through just back and forth. Can you put the cube on my head? Can you put the cube on the rug? And so that's the second part of the game. The third part of the game is recall, and this is where they have to tell me what the name is. And so we play a really fun game, and I'll shut my eyes and I'll say, what we're going to do is I'm going to close my eyes, and then you're going to put a solid in my hands. I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to have to guess what it is. And so a child will, and I always have to say 1, because then they like to be really tricky and try to put all 3 in my hands to try to figure it out. So I would close my eyes and I would start to just talk about things that define this. I'd say, oh, I can roll it in my hands, and so I know that it's round, but I feel that it's flat on the bottom and it's flat on the top. I think that this must be the cylinder. It is the cylinder. And so you put a lot of emotion into it to try to entice the children. And they think it's great. They think you're the smartest person in the world. And we go through all 3 of them. And after we've done that, it's time for the child to do it. And so that's the most rewarding part of the lesson, because their eyes are closed and they're touching it and they're saying a lot of the same words that you said. Like, oh, it's really pointy here, and I feel that the sides are flat. Well, it feels like it could be. In some cases where they're not at the 3rd period yet, which is very true for the first time that a child does this lesson, I might say, do you need a hint? And then I'll whisper it in their ears, because there's usually a lot of children around the rug at that time waiting for their turn. So that's how it happens with the geometric solids from the sensorial area. Yeah, okay, the first period is association. I'm going to cheat off the notes here. But the association gives a name to a sense or a sound perception, and the name presented are those related to perceptions in comparison or contrast, such as 1 unit bead, 1 10-bar, 100 square, or a, b, or k. The name or sound is spoken clearly. So they get, this is a cylinder, this is a cube, this is a sphere. You're just pointing it out and saying what it is. The second period is recognition. So then you're saying to the child, can you put the 10-bar in my hand? So then they have to remember which one the 10-bar is and then follow through with that. If a child is unable to do that, then we go back to the first period, and that's where we focus until we feel they might be comfortable. But again, we don't know if they've got it until we go to the second period and ask them to start, oh, can you point to ch? Can you cover sh? And give them that sort of extra added extension. And then the third period is with them knowing it from kind of like a cold start. I'm not saying the name for them. I'm not saying, this is the 1,000 cube. Can you put the 1,000 cube in my hand? It's more, this is, and then they have to tell me from the get-go. And so the third period takes a little longer to get to in the process. Well, it depends on what it is. With the geometric solids, I don't think that would be one that's done every day, because once you're down on the floor with that one, you could have the whole class waiting in line, because they really love playing the game about closing their eyes and feeling it. The sandpaper letters, yes, that's like brushing your teeth one, especially for kindergartners when they're first coming in at the beginning of the year. You know, it's like we're practicing this every day because you need to recognize the sound symbol association. For 4-year-olds, it might not be that, it might not be every day, but it would be a couple times a week. That's a good question. And it really does depend on the child. Well, to some extent, I'd say there's some lessons that they're not always an option for some children. I would just say your responsibility today is to sit down with me and do the sandpaper letters. And that again is based on a single child's need. You know, there might be some children who want to come do this, but I would say, you know what? We've done the sandpaper letters so much, it's actually time for you to get out the movable alphabet and practice that. Because they're becoming dependent on the adult having that adult connection right there and being engaged with the adult. And again, that's a case-by-case basis, and then you're always measuring that each time you work with a child. Shh. And shh. So the first part, again, is just the association part. So I'd single the first sound out, trace, and then say it. Shh. 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 Please touch shh. Put ch under the table. Put ch on the table. Point to shh. Trace ch. And so you're going back and forth, and then with the sandpaper letters, our third part, which is again the recall where they're telling me is the knock knock game. So we flip them over. Okay, please knock on a sound. Who's there? Shh. Yes, that does say shh. And so this is what we do a lot at the beginning of the language when they are making the sound and symbol association with the sandpaper letters. And it's really exciting for them to get it. And because the first few times that they do it, they're on the same sounds a lot. And it's just the repetition and going back to it and practicing. So that's a lot of fun. With the math lesson, this is the introductory tray. And this is where we practice and introduce the names unit bead, 10 bar, 100 square. And for language, we'll always do just 2 sounds unless it's a child who has a lot of practice and they're ready for 3 different sounds. But we really try to keep them isolated so there's a greater chance for success. With the solids, we'll normally do 3, and that's just because it's too short of a lesson if it's just 2. And then with math again, because at this point it's pretty much sensorial, we'll go back to the 3. So I would start with the unit bead, the 10 bar, and the 100 square, and I would do it in the same way where I'm pointing it out, 100 square, 10 bar, unit bead, 10 bar, 100 square. And I might try to pull them back into it because that can get repetitive and boring, and so I might repeat myself 10 times in a row and say 100 square, 100 square, just to see if they're paying attention and to get a laugh out of them, just to keep them engaged. And then the second one would be, again, can you put the 100 square under the rug? Can you put the 100 square on the rug? Can you put the 10 bar in my hand? Can you put the 10 bar on the rug? And then the third game, I would have them close their eyes and I'd say, I'm going to put one of these in your hand and I want you to touch it and feel it and tell me what it is. And so they're taking in the material, not only visually, but then they're also getting to touch it and really feel like, oh, here's just one unit bead, but then they get to really explore it and feel that there's 10 on here and take in the information that way. We also have a lesson after this that shows you how to take all of the 10 bars and build the 100 squares, so they start to see the equality of the material. So that's really exciting for me as a Montessorian. And that's pretty much all there is to the 3-period lesson.